Hello everyone, it is me, and today I'm going to be reading a short article for you today. And basically it's about, I don't know if you heard of this, but the online safety bill, the online harm bill, whatever you want to call it, has unfortunately been passed. So I'm reading an article by Cyber News. The news article will be in the description, and it says, well, the title says, UK Parliament finally approves online safety bill, concerns remain, and rightfully so. So I would be. So this article is quite short because I haven't found any news coverage of this. I really have not found barely any news coverage of this. The only one I found mainstream source, like for instance, there was none by the Daily Mail, none by the Guardian, Sky News, etc., etc. I only found it on one on Newsround, that kids channel which I don't see why they need a kid channel for news. I think they should get rid of Newsround because I don't think it would. I think it's a bit weird that Newsround is owned by the BBC, by the government, and they're spreading news to kids. It never ends well for stuff like that. So I think we should get rid of Newsround with the BBC altogether. But anyway, I digress. Britain controversial safety bill setting tougher standards for social media platforms has finally passed in Parliament. The document has finally altered since it was proposed, but some are still unhappy. Well, yeah, it shouldn't exist in the first place. The United Kingdom Technology Secretary Michelle Donnellan, I believe that's how you pronounce it, said the bill explained here was a game-changing piece of legislation. Yeah, you can say that again, it's not good. Today, this government is taking an enormous step forward to make the UK the safest place in the world to be online, she stated. So essentially, this should mean the most authoritarian place in the world, most totalitarian place in the UK to be on the internet. Yeah, at least be honest about it. You're not fooling anyone here, love. I'm afraid. We know what you were up to, which I'll explain after the article. What you were up to. You're not. And either way, though, I don't want the internet to be a safe place. I don't want it to be a safe place. Yeah, there should be some legislation here and there, of course, but most part, I just want to be left alone. I think most people just want, because the internet was supposed to be wild internet for ideas. This is where the majority of whistleblowers go to expose stuff that massive corporations and governments have done, that are illegal or very immoral at the very least. But this is the government, so I don't think they would want that anyway. The bill introduced new regulatory regime to address illegal and harmful content. I wonder what harmful means. Illegal content, some content is, fair enough, child porn certainly should be banned. Tougher sentences for people that do that stuff, certainly do. But what is harmful content? What is harmful content? It's very subjective. What is harmful content? Whatever the government wants. Let's not peek around the bush. It's just whatever the government wants. Anything that the government says the government doesn't like is going to be used. Let's be honest. Once it receives royal assent and becomes law, social media platforms such as Facebook or TikTok will be expected to remove illegal content quickly or prevent it from appearing online in the first place. The Comms watchdog Ofcom will now be the main internet regulatory in the country. Social media platforms will have to remove illegal content quickly or prevent it from appearing in the first place, including content promoting self-harm. Well, let's be honest. Self-harm, as bad as self-harm is, and it shouldn't be promoted, it's not illegal at the end of the day. It's not illegal. That's content that promotes self-harm is disgusting and vile. Don't get me wrong, but still shouldn't be banned. Shouldn't be banned. As sick it is, just people who do that kind of content just should be publicly ostracized from society. But you can't do that because of the Equality Act, so you can't kick people out of businesses who you don't want. So I believe that going off topic, but stuff like this is disgusting, on self-harm is disgusting. Just going off topic, but it still should be allowed. It's still free speech at the end of the day. And in any somewhat free society should have free speech. So in my opinion, stuff like this, the people should be called out and just ostracized from society for promoting it. Same thing with degenerate ideas, but anyway, to prevent children from accessing harmful and age inappropriate content. So stuff like gore sites or porn, essentially. Enforcing age limits and age checking measures. Ensure the risks and dangers posed to children on the largest social media platform are more transparent, including by publishing risk assessments. Provide parents and children with clear, accessible ways to report problems online when they do arise. Well, you can already do that. You can do that. Previously, because so much attention is paid to online safety online, the bill supporters have included the National Society for Prevention of Cruelty to Children, the safety group Internet Watch Foundation, bereaved parents who claim harmful content contributed to their child's death, and sexual abuse behaviour as well. Is that, lots of grooming happens online. Let's not kid ourselves. It's disgusting that people should be arrested who do that action. But at the end of the day, you're the parent. You should be looking at what your kids are doing. It's not the government's job. As sad as it is that happened, at the end of the day, you have to be accountable as well. It's kind of your fault. Like, I'm not trying to be mean. I'm not saying the kids deserved it, because they don't, they're kids. But, as a parent, you should have known that something was going on. You should have checked in the first place, especially if they were children. But anyway, I digress. It's what the government does. They try and play on people's heartstrings. Like, look, all these poor kids are being groomed, so give up rest of your civil liberties. It's been all that way throughout history. But anyway, that's Chris. Chris DiManitra, Chief Global Strategy Officer of the CSICA, the Global Professional Association of Learning Organisation for Information Security. Global passing off the bill, a milestone moment for improving on internet safety in the UK. And also a milestone for making the government much more powerful as well. So I think if you're a government employee and certainly a politician, you're going to enjoy this bill a lot. And either way, no one should be surprised that this bill got passed, since why would the government, in any right mind, say no to a bill that gives them more power? No politician, like 99% of politicians are not going to say no. We're going to be like, yes, we will oppose it. So, like, they will say stuff like, it's democracy, the people voted for it. They will only do what the people vote for if it benefits them. So if it's just like wanting more security, more regulation, for like the internet, stuff like that gives the government more power, they will certainly do it. Just a common sense, they will do it. But when it's stuff like what people ask for, and it's the majority and it doesn't benefit them, like hypothetically if this was to be much more opposed, which already is quite opposed. It's not as big as I remember Article 13 being, because if you remember that, I remember it. There was like protest about it. I don't think there's been any more protest about the online harms bill, unfortunately. There still should be, and there probably is. I might actually search up afterwards, but it's much more serious than it sounds. It's much more serious than it is. Okay, if implemented effectively, the legislation will provide appropriate protection for UK citizens to live online safely, keeping them safe from harmful and fraudulent content, creating enhanced digital trust between platform and users, told Cyber News. If companies do not comply with the new regulation, Ofcom will be able to issue fines up to £18 million or $22 million or 10% of their annual global turnover. Now, this could be optimistic for actually getting the bill banned, which I will discuss later on how this could actually. This right here, the fines could actually consider government to change their ways. Not out of anything good, but I'll explain after the article. The article is quite short, so it won't be long. The 300-page document has been heavily updated since it was first posted 4 years ago. New provisions related to trolling, deepfake porn, and cruelty and scam ads have been added. Yeah, so stuff like that. So I'm confused now. Deepfake porn is when it's when you have like someone's face on it. So we're getting rid of that. So anyway, what about encryption? Most importantly, so in November 2022, the UK government shifted away from tackling legal but harmful content after campaigning and some lawmakers very concerned that it could be crucial free speech. I think they have toned that part down a bit, but it certainly isn't good. It's a bit better. It's kind of like, would you rather have 2 fingers cut off or 3? Both are not good, but one is a bit better than the other. Essentially that situation. London has previously said that social media companies could be fined if they fail to stamp out harmful content such as abuse, even if it fell below the criminal threshold, while Instagram managers could have also faced criminal action. Some concerns remain about the contentious and hard to prevent breach of the bill. Is this requirement to scan encrypted messages for illegal content? Compliance would likely involve a client scanning to detect illegal content before it's encrypted. A suggestion that's already been serious criticisms for security experts, as being both unworkable and a threat to privacy and security. Meta's WhatsApp Signal and other similar apps which use end-to-end encryption, which protects messages from being seen by people outside the chat, have previously threatened to leave the UK if they are forced to enable scanning. That actually gives me some hope, which I'm going to discuss at the end of the video. However, a few weeks ago, the UK government said that Ofcom could not be required to order scanning unless appropriate technology exists. What technology would that be? This appears to have been a sort of climb down, and the solutions was cautiously welcomed by campaigners and tech leaders. Caution is smart, as Britain has already urged Meta not to roll out end-to-end encryption on Instagram, Facebook Messenger without measures to protect children from sexual abuse. Meta plans to implement end-to-end encryption across messages and Instagram direct messages, save the technology and enforce online safety and security. So that's the end of the technology. So one thing that actually could actually stop this bill from being passed. This is a theory, and hopefully it will happen. I'm not optimistic, but this is a small chance. That if anyone remember Article 13, you would remember that essentially, like, it would basically just bill that would ban all copyright material altogether. So like what it's like in China, lots of people stood out against it. It was passed, but it was scrapped. Even like platforms like YouTube went against it because how bad it was. The only people that was like kind of pushing it around was the music industry. But with this, if they're saying that they will pull off 10%, this is some hope. 10% of global profits. I forgot what it was. We'll look down a bit. Sorry, where does it say it again? Global annual turnover. This could actually make them leave, like all big tech companies leave. Now that sounds bad, which it is, but that would cause. See, let's be honest. In lots of ways, social media companies and the big tech industry as a whole has more power than governments, especially when it comes to elections. Since because everyone uses social media, so they have, and that's where politics mainly is at the end of the day. So on those apps, they can really dictate what politicians look good or not. So in lots of ways, big tech has more power than the government does. So if the big tech industry said we're going to leave, in lots of ways the government have to imply, since they're going to be like, right, if all these big tech companies leave, then like what are we going to do? Since let's be honest, lots of government officials are in bed with lots of big tech CEOs. So let's not kid ourselves here. So in that regard, that could give some hope, because that would kind of what happened to Article 13. But then again, though, on the bad side of the situation, it could be more regulation means harder, competitors, much more hard to compete, because when it says stuff like making it harder for companies to dismiss things like child abuse, in lots of ways that seem good. But then again, like, there'll all be some parts that are missed. So in that regard, though, because an example would be that I think it was Instagram, where there like lots of child sex rings happening, like child porn rings, extremely disgusting stuff, and Instagram did know it was happening, but they didn't do anything. But at the end, and they should have. They're a billionaire company. It's Meta. It's owned by Meta, so they should know. That was happening. But I think they are using that as an excuse to make it harder for startups to happen. Because, like I said before, there will all be unfortunately something that falls under the rug that will all be dismissed. So, like for instance, if you have a small like social media company starting up, it will be much harder for them to moderate it. So it would also, in that regard, squeeze out competitors. It will make it much a less competitive market and make the tech industry, certainly the social media industry, more monopolized. Sorry, more monopolized than it already is, due to that fact. So it's gonna make in some ways it could possibly make it much more monopolized than it already is because of that factor alone. Since like if if social media companies are aware of it, like Meta, and they aren't doing anything about it, fine, they should be fined and even possibly taken down if it's extremely bad, and depending on the employees who are doing it. In that regard, you can understand it. But if they don't know about it because they don't have a moderation on it, then at the end of the day, people who find this content should call the police. It's the police job to maintain law and order and enforce justice, not the government. Sorry, I don't mean the government, but not the social media companies. Like, yes, if they do know about it and they're being completely complacent with it, then they should be fined and punished. I completely agree with that. But this is just, it seems like me, an excuse to just regulate the social media industry more, so there will be less competitors. So in that, so it could benefit like big tech, the big tech industry in that regard, because it will mean less competitors. They'll get more money and they'll have more power. Same thing with the government, since like alternative sites such as Rumble and Odyssey, it will be much harder for them to operate, and then they'll eventually be destroyed. And they say, well, either have to just stop operating in the UK, or just shut down essentially. So it will be much harder for free speech, since those are kind of the only apps that have free speech content here. Because, well, we say they do, and I think for the most part they do, since they do say they have free speech, and they mostly hold up to it. So I agree with them on that regard. So there's also the fact about saying age-checking measures for stuff like porn. This is like kind of an excuse for because for like the conservative side, the traditionalists, to kind of be on board with it, because they're old-fashioned, they don't like porn and stuff like that. I believe this. I'm having my tinfoil hat on here, but this is kind of like an excuse, so we can try and get more conservative voters on board with it and conservative supporters. Because look, hypothetically speaking, if it was only the thing saying fine, you need ID to watch porn, I'll be a bit skeptical of it, because for the factor is that never in the UK there been regulation to look at media essentially, in your privacy of your own home. So for instance, you can buy an 18 game or watch an 18 movie at any age at home, but you're not allowed to purchase the product. So there isn't any restrictions for playing an 18 rated game like GTA or Call of Duty, for instance, if you're a kid. But you're not allowed to buy it. Is that basically how the rules go? But although they have been people saying they need face scans, that I think it was the ESRB wanting face scans in America to check if people are old enough to play 18 rated games. So in that regard, that is in America, by the way, and I think fortunately because of the First Amendment and things like that, it won't get passed. But the government in the US rarely holds up to the American Constitution, so I won't be so optimistic. But fortunately they do have a constitution to protect rights such as this, which we in the UK don't have. So in that regard, I would be a bit hypothetically. I would be a bit off, but I'll be fine. It's a bit more subjective when it's on stuff online, or because you won't want kids watching porn, but you would. But you would be skeptical what counts as mature content would be stuff ideas that are a threat to democracy, hypothetically, stuff like that. That is a bit more a bit the consequences where that could lead to. But if it were just that, I'd be fair enough. At the end of the day, same thing with stuff like alcohol, and cigarettes, etc., and vapes. But the parent be looking what their kids are consuming at the end of the day. It should be up to them. Not up to them, but it should be them punishing them for doing actions such as that. But at the end of the day, people are stupid. We live in the UK. We are the first country to industrialise. Therefore, we are the most stupid. So some having ID to buy alcohol, fine. In a perfect world, there will be no ID or VAT or anything like it on it so anyone can buy it. But most people can get behind, protecting children from dangerous substances. It's not something I really care that much about, but But in that case, it will be I'll be like, fine, fair enough. But this is like stuff like legal but harmful. What is harmful is completely subjective, and like it's just going to be a grey area like most laws that government imposes. Because then they can literally, if it's someone the government doesn't like, they can just they can just say you're sentenced from you're going to go to prison for this certain crime, even though it's extremely vague. So the legal but harmful thing is probably just going to be done for that for people the government don't like. So I don't think it will be firstly. I don't think it will be like day one. It's going to be extremely totalitarian. What's going to happen is that it's going to be It's going to be a slow implementation of being getting more stricter and more stricter and more stricter over time. What happened with most laws, to be honest. So what most governments do. They do put like more moderate laws what people can get behind, and then or they won't even put a fuss about it. Same thing like, for instance, like like an example would be the right to bear arms. They're like, look, you might need some ID to buy a gun. People are like, fine. They'll be like, you shouldn't be able to own an AK-47. And it's like, fine. It's quite a dangerous gun. It's not necessarily needed for like if a burglar were to break into your home. Then like, we're banning shotguns, fine. And then we're banning guns altogether. Is that how it usually goes? And this is how it's probably going to be, unfortunately, for this. But I do have some optimism, a slight bit, that it will just be banned because of the fact that if companies do leave, certainly big companies, they will be kind of screwed at the end of the day, since lots of them, let's be honest, lobby government. So in that regard, that's some optimism. But it's just what the government always does. It's trying to spy on citizens for more power. It's just basically for power at the end of the day. To control what the citizens can see and stuff, and it's always under the mask of think of the children, other things like that. Like, don't you care for the poor? Don't you care about these poor vulnerable people? No, it's just the government trying to play with heartstrings. Essentially, it's how it is. It's just trying to try and fool the masses into thinking it's going to be a good thing. Fortunately, lots of people have fallen under their act. Have not fallen under their act. Lots of people have realised what we are trying to do, fortunately, when it comes to this. But there are lots of people still in the dark about it, very naive at the very best. For instance, I remember on TikTok I was talking about talking to an old man. He was a nice old man. I've got what his name was. He was on TikTok. My account got banned again thanks to him, motherfucking fat cunt. But my account was banned. And he was an old man. He did lots of charity work. He seemed like a very nice guy. And basically he said the online safety bill was going to be passed. Now, and I'll put comments like, this is a disaster for civil liberties. And we had a bit of a debate and stuff. He was a very nice guy. And he would be very polite. He wasn't being very rude. He was like saying stuff like, yes, but one of his arguments I remember was like, let's say, for instance, a wolf would like protect his young kids who are not mentally ready or stable enough. Therefore, the government should do the same. It was probably nothing like that. We're basically saying that we have a duty to protect the vulnerable. But I was kind of like, I didn't say this, but I was like, in like a completely anarchist setting, or in like complete anarchism, where it's like survival of the fittest, survival of the fittest, social Darwinian type society. Anyone who is like undesirable, who are just a drain, who are just a parasite, will be killed. Will just be killed off, or just left to die. Since in that situation, we would have not a duty to look after vulnerable people. And the only reason why we would probably look after kids, if we were in like a society like that, if we were animals, which we are, but if we're like wolves, for instance, we would only look after the kids just for our own self-interests, so we could survive more and our genes can keep going on and on. Not for think of the children type of stuff, just for our own selfish interests. And the funny thing was this guy did say he was an anarchist while supporting laws that restricts freedom, which is a bit hypocritical. And I kind of did say that. I wasn't being rude or anything, but I did say that it was kind of hypocritical of you supporting more laws while saying you are an anarchist, which goes against a lot. But either way, I think lots of anarchist philosophy is just a bunch of bullshit, to be fair. Like, lots of them are like wanting to have equality, like, like get anarcho-communists, anarcho-syndicalists. I don't think you can have equality without centralization. But I digress. I'm not a political ideology expert, but that always got me quite confused. Since you do get people like anarcho-capitalists who just want the government completely gone. I'm not sure if a society like that could work, but at least they're honest that there won't be equality. But it'll still be like hierarchy. But in that regard, I can understand. So it just shows that that you're just kind of what the government wants. You're just kind of what the government wants. You're just playing with people's heartstrings. People who are very naive. NPCs. So not good. But anyway, hopefully, just I have not much to say anymore. It's just the government doing what governments do best. Restrict freedoms. It's that kind of their job. So anyway. Is that what I have to say? Comment below what you thought about the online safety bill. Do you like or do you not? I think it's literally the devil would be quite shocked at this himself if he would see the bill. But anyway, I digress. Anyway, thanks for watching. Please like, subscribe. Goodbye.